Scotland can bring out the poet in you. And all that sentimentality and pride that pours out of its people comes from our landscape. From this golden light that we get in all seasons, when it's dark and cold, and then suddenly, sunbeams cut through the cloud and paint the ground, making your heart stop, making you feel that this is where you belong.
The story of the RNLI has always had women in it. But the popular image of a hero at sea hasn't changed in a century. It isn't me. It's probably a bearded man staring into a storm in yellow oilskins.
Stornoway Coast Guard, this is Oban Lifeboat, channel 16, over.
I get annoyed when I hear people saying that the story of the RNLI is changing. That women volunteers are part of some sort of revolution. The truth is, we aren't the pioneers. Others led the way. So I feel like maybe women have been underestimated through the years. I feel like they've always been there, and there are particular women in the RNLI's history like Grace Darling who were major influences really early on, and they were some of the first people to kind of cement that rescue history and actually go out on shouts.
Forecast for the next 24 hours. Viking, cyclonic 5 to 7, occasionally gale 8 at first. Squally showers, moderate or good.
Water is probably one of the biggest parts of our lives here in Oban. There are more than 100 Scottish words for rain. Melodic words like spindrift, a spray whipped up by the wind. Then there's dreich, a miserable wet day. It rains more in summer than it does in spring. The weather brings us together as people. It's through the spirit of community that I came to see the lifeboat station as the best of us. Something that I wanted to be part of.
Oban's quite a small community with about 8,000 to 10,000 local residents. We've got a Facebook group called Information Oban. You can find out everything you want to know. Or if you've lost something, everyone will be out looking for it, your dog or your wedding ring, or everyone knows everyone, or you know everyone's face. I grew up in Oban. Spent a lot of time as a child on the beach with the dogs. So with the pager, you're on call constantly if you're a volunteer. I just have mine with me 24/7. So when the pager goes off, I think you kind of go into the zone and you just get to the station. Going out in a storm on the boat is an element of managing fear because you don't know what you're going to face, and it could be something that's not necessarily very nice. But I think you kind of internalise that. I don't think there's really time to be scared.
We have one of the largest lifeboat area patches in the UK. We moved for the lifeboat and I knew nobody. If it wasn't for the lifeboat crew, they became my family, they became my friends, they introduced me to the wider community, they introduced me to Oban, and without the lifeboat crew being my family when I had nobody else, I would have been really, really lost moving to a new town. I grew up in a small town in the southwest corner of Scotland called Stranraer. Stranraer is very well known for its ferry ports, where we would catch the ferries to Belfast in Northern Ireland. One of the ferry that I grew up on going across had two balconies at the very rear. They were caged in and you just felt like you were so close. They were right on top of the engines, so you would go right as close to the cage as you could, just holding on, feeling like you were on top of the sea and not in the actual ferry anymore. The ferry was a playground for me as a kid.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's the outside. My name is George Campbell. On behalf of Caledonian and the crew, I'd like to welcome aboard the Isle of Mull for the service route to Great Europe.
The ferries are still at the heart of my life. I live in an old harbour house overlooking the Oban terminal. So in the mornings at 5, 6 in the morning, I'll hear the ferry tannoys announcing everybody that it's time to depart Oban, and it's just a comfort because I hear it every morning. It's part of my daily routine. It's just always there and comforting. Sometimes I'll hear the ships doing their emergency drills and procedures, and you'll hear like the captain shouting, abandon ship, and you'll think, oh goodness, is it a drill?
Your safety is our highest priority, and therefore we ask you to please listen carefully to the following.
As a child, I lived in Snowdonia in North Wales, which was quite claustrophobic in a way. It wasn't really close to the sea at all, so we were constantly surrounded by the hills and trees. We always used to come up here on holiday, and I suppose it always felt really open and really peaceful. I'm drawn to the sea because it feels peaceful, and it's almost like an escape from real life. So I started out as a kayak instructor when I was a teenager, when I was 17, 18. And I knew I was kind of confident in myself, in my ability, but not necessarily confident in how people perceived me or that they actually thought I could keep them safe. There are a few times where I think I remember getting frustrated that people didn't effectively trust me because I was a young girl. I think as a young woman myself, one of the reasons that I wanted to join was to kind of say, yeah, no, we can do this. Why not? We don't need to be older. We don't need to be stronger. We don't need to be something that we're not. But we've still got skills that we can bring to something like that. But at the same time, just generally, I feel like we question ourselves too much, or we lack confidence in ourselves.
So the Outer Hebrides around Oban and the islands around Oban are some of the most beautiful places you'll ever see in your life. White, sandy beaches. Even when it's just a bit moody, it's very intriguing. Growing up around the water, I think sometimes you take that for granted. And I think once you get older, you realise that's a really incredible experience that you've had. I think growing up in Oban does equip you for the cold. If you're out too long, obviously, in the elements, you're still going to feel it. I decided to take a sabbatical and travelled around Australasia. We decided to dive the Barrier Reef. It was just dead coral compared to Thailand. It was just awful. Very few fish, hardly any life, and you're sold to it as this big kind of dream, and it was just devastating. It really made me want to try and do something that could make a difference and help in whatever way I could. My sister works at the local ambulance station, and she, like me, changed her career later in life. And I've always just been really proud of her, and I thought, oh, it's really nice that she's doing something that gives back to the local community, even though it's her job. But I just think it's a really nice thing to do, and I really wanted to give something back as well. So yeah, that's why I decided to volunteer for the RNLI.
The islanders here rely on the ferries as a lifeline for their foods, their jobs, their visiting family, tourism, economy. Without the ferries, the islands would really struggle. I also work offshore, so I'm 2 weeks off the mainland and 2 weeks on the mainland. In between all of this, I'm at sea on the lifeboat. I suppose our role is, in some ways, to be a safeguard for the ocean economies. Reassuring people that they can do their jobs and we will look out for them. Fishermen, mussel farmers, oil workers, anyone who spends time at sea. In the beginning, it felt like a great weight of responsibility. My first shout was when I was 18 years old in an inshore lifeboat, so totally exposed to the elements. There was no cover. And it was a missing person on the coastline. So we had to do quite a large search because you don't know where this person is. But it was quite rough. It was very choppy. The waves were so high at a certain point. If we went over, we would have capsized. I would say I've been responding to the pager for so many years now that I've trained my body how to react to the pager going off and how to control my emotions in order to do the best physically and mentally that I can do. It's a very hard thing to describe. It becomes ingrained in your system. It's a part of your life. You don't think, you just react. It's a very much, it is just a routine that is inbuilt into your body. When you've done it for so long, you hear the pager, you don't even think. Sometimes I have to remember to turn off cookers and stuff like that because I literally just think, grab and run.
Good.
Well done.
Good. No, so sorry. Don't apologise. Right. How are you feeling?
Just
okay. I want to get you up on the seat so we're not still in the water, okay?
Slack pressure pattern with generally light winds for most. However, an advancing Atlantic frontal system will freshen the winds in the northwest during Sunday and into Monday.
When you're on call, there's always this feeling of disquiet. That you're waiting for something, but the call always arrives when you're off guard. The weather in Scotland is pretty unpredictable, especially on the west coast. The landscape is so changeable, and the sea is so changeable, and the weather's so changeable.
Rain then fair, moderate becoming good. Forces Cromarty, fourth time dogger. West or southwest becoming cyclonic in Cromarty.
We all use different forecasts, but you really need to look at 2 or 3 to really work out what's going on. NASA couldn't predict the Scottish weather. I definitely think it's healthy to be scared of the ocean. It is so unpredictable. Any complacency is almost just asking for trouble. People do get caught out all the time, and that's why we get lifeboat call-outs. I always feel pretty safe on the lifeboat, but yeah, it can still get quite wild. This is what keeps me on my toes most. This swing between wild and tranquil that we experience on the coast. Some days the waves come right into town. Then there are these extraordinary moments of calm, and that's when we head inland. I might do a couple of rolls at the end, but in which case we have some very unique sea locks. You can actually see the different layers in the water. So the water will be almost brown in colour, but if you put your hand through it, you can see the change. The clear salt water below.
My great-granddad was in the Navy in World War II, and he got sunk several times on the Navy boat. So I think that's my biggest connection to the ocean is him, and always seeing his Navy pictures around the house.
So the university that I go to is the University of Highlands and Islands, Scottish Association for Marine Science, which is actually a research institute. So we are really fortunate that we get to play with robots and lots of things that active researchers are playing with as well. I feel like as a local, from growing up here, it's changed a lot. It feels like the summers are warmer for longer and our winters aren't quite as cold as they used to be. So the Gulf Stream is a massive part of how we get our climate. So with climate change, obviously, if the Gulf Stream is affected by the slowing down of the Atlantic overturning circulation, which is something that's possible, then it could massively impact our local climate here. These robots can now go underneath sea ice and get recordings. And this is really important because as the sea ice melts, we need to know kind of what's going on beneath. And that gives us a picture of what's going to happen in the future. So the Gulf Stream is a massive part of how we get our climate. I think the impact on marine life on the west coast of Scotland from a change in the Gulf Stream is a big unknown.
Startgenerate board. يعني تحترق سامق ياشتر. Tiaki ishtin the bordage. Ashni nochus recorder to the fortune.
May I have your attention, please, everyone? Welcome on board this Caledonian midbrain vessel. Your safety is our highest priority, and therefore we ask you to please listen carefully to the following safety information. We operate a fleet of well-equipped vessels on all our routes throughout the west coast of Scotland. In the unlikely event of an emergency, you will be informed by means of an emergency signal, consisting of 7 or more short blasts, followed by 1 prolonged blast on the ship's whistle, alarm bell, or public address system. On hearing this signal, you should proceed directly to your nearest muster station. Follow the signs indicating the direction you should go.
It's not uncommon for couples to be on the same crew. The British Isles has 238 RNLI stations. So it's fair to say that love and lifeboats do mix. My partner and I met through the RNLI. I was a volunteer on one station and he was at a different station. And we just got to know each other through combined exercises, and that eventually led to us getting together. Now he's the full-time coxswain of Oban Lifeboat Station. It means the lifeboat is almost all of my life. But when we're on a call out together, we're not a couple anymore. We can't let emotion control us when we're on a lifeboat. We need logic to control us when we're on a lifeboat. We need to think clear. We need to have clear minds, straight heads. We can't get upset. We can't cry. We need to just, we're there to do a job. I didn't drink whiskey until I came to Oban Lifeboat Station, and there is times when we have done horrible shouts together and we will just, right, let's all sit down for a minute and let's all have a whiskey together. And that's the best form of helping yourself you can do. Just sit down and take a moment. We're lucky because our lifeboat station is full of characters that we can turn to in the worst of times. The biggest hero on the boat is probably Ian, our longest serving crew member. The youngest is Andrew, who also works on the ferries. He's probably at sea more than he's on land. Then there's the heart of the boat, Tom, our full-time mechanic and shoulder to cry on.
So joining the lifeboat and things like that have given me the confidence to go, yeah, I can do it, and why not? And why can't I change that perception? And there is a certain amount of empowerment that just comes with, yeah, I'm more than just a, blonde-haired girl. Shouldn't even be a stereotype. There's a false perception that it is all about men. There is this grand idea that you give without receiving. That the purest form of charity is expecting nothing back. But this isn't true with the RNLI. Being a volunteer isn't just a privilege, it's a way to grow and find out who you really are as a person. That's a learning for me and something I'll pass on to other women who join us.
So 2022 marks 50 years of a lifeboat being stationed in Oban. So to celebrate this, we have went through the station archives, the lofts, the cupboards, and to see the history of our boats, crews, stories. All the faces that stare out from these photographs, all the things that these people have seen. So we've had 4 babies born on our lifeboats. So they're all from the Isle of Mull. This is one of the newspaper clippings in the family.
My name is Kerry McGilvery and I live in Pennygown Farm in the Isle of Mull. I was born on the RNLI lifeboat on the way to Oban.
The RNLI's lifeboat crews and lifeguards have saved more than 140,000 lives since 1824. And each one of those lives is interwoven with others. Now, we are part of that thread of history.
I think COVID's probably changed a lot of people's perspectives on life. Now, after having to spend all that time away from people we love, I think it's brought people closer together in a sad and strange way. I think everyone in Oban's a bit like that. If someone's not having a good time, there'll be someone to pick them up. And I think with COVID, that's kind of expanding beyond small communities and into kind of the bigger cities as well. People have always made sacrifices. So why should we be any different?